there's a point that needs to be underlined, and most people know it already, but just to do this, the Cardinals are having their worst season since 2007. We know that. It's been ugly. It's been really, really bad. And to the extent that this is as bad as it's been since 2007, in fact, nothing's been close to this bad since 2007, their last losing season. This season's in a special category, and there's no glossing over it. It's just a really awful season. However, we can't miss the fact that even though this is surprising because it's this extreme, the Cardinals have been losing ground. They've been slipping and losing ground for a while. Now, you got to understand something when I say this. Well, they still make the play. Yeah, they still make the playoffs. Okay, now you tell me what they do in the playoffs. What about the regular season winning percentage? Like the way it's been sort of first 8 years of John Mozeliak, then the second 8 years of John Mozeliak. And all these things, if you track all these things, the Cardinals have been gradually slipping, and that's the key, gradually slipping. This year, the bottom fell out. Other years, they because this is when the NL Central was really weak, which in my opinion, it's not this year, because if it's so weak, why have the Cardinals, who are like they have the best record in the majors over the last 15 games, they're 10-5. They can't make up any ground. So if the NL Central is so pathetic, well, why can't the Cardinals even crack? Why can't they even get the single-digit deficit, right?
Good point. Yep.
I think division with all the young talent influx is very, very good.
Much better.
Even the Pirates. I mean, look, their time has passed this season, but the Pirates have much more talent than we're used to seeing. So anyway, I'm going to try to go through this really quick. But you got to just remember the first 8 years of Mozeliak and then the last 8 years of Mozeliak. The cutoff is the end of the first 8 years was 2015.
All right.
All right.
Yep.
So, all right. Let me do this. All right. Regular season winning percentage. His first 8 years, .562, second best in the majors. In his last 8 seasons, .539, not awful, but ninth. So the first 8 years with Mozeliak running the baseball setup, second best winning percentage in the regular season. Now they're ninth over the last 8 years, winning percentage over the in the regular season. So they've gone from second to ninth. In the first 8 seasons with Mo in charge of baseball, first 8 seasons, the Cardinals competed in 64 postseason games. In his last 7 seasons, but we're going to call it 8 because they ain't going to be in the playoffs this year.
Right.
So in his first 8 seasons, they competed in 64 postseason games. In the last 8, they've competed in 15 postseason games. Right. See?
Huge difference.
I mean, they were on center stage for like long periods of time, just about every October, 64 postseason games over 8 seasons. These last 8 seasons, including this one, 15 postseason games. Now, if that isn't a decline, and again, we don't hold the Cardinals, they're graded on a curve. You don't compare what they do to historically, the Pirates and the Rockies and now the Oakland A's. They're held to a higher standard. They're considered one of the, one of those big 5 or 6 teams in the majors that should always win, right?
Yes.
So that's how you got to view this decline in that context. We're not talking about some rebuilding team that hasn't won forever. No, this is a team that's been on top and been on top and been on top and really competing, getting to the league championship series. And then all of a sudden now they're not. So again, the first 8 seasons, Mo as the GM, baseball head, 64 postseason games. The last 8, 15 postseason games. That's just I look at that and just go, wow. Whatever happened to October baseball here in St. Louis, right? All right, postseason victories. In Mo's first 8 season, 34, second most in the majors. I think like 2 less than the Giants. His first 8 seasons, they won 34 postseason games. You know what they've done in his last 8 seasons, and that includes this one because there will not be any playoffs. You know how many postseason games they've won in his last 8 seasons?
4 or 5?
4.
Is it that bad?
So they go from winning 34 in the postseason in his first 8 seasons to now the second half, the last 8 seasons, they've won 4.
Oh, boy.
And if they fail to make the postseason, and let's assume they will, that'll be 34 postseason wins in the first 8 years and only 4 in the second 8 years. They're 5-17 in the last 22 postseason games, including that humiliating 1-9. The Cardinals, in terms of percentage of the seasons where you qualify for the postseason, his first 8 seasons, they got in the playoffs 6 times. That's 75%. That was the best percentage of any major league team making the playoff during those 8 seasons.
Okay.
But as the Cardinals this year, as expected, don't get in, that means they will have reached the playoffs 4 times in the last 8 years. That'll be a success rate of 50%. So when you're making it 75% of the time in his first 8 seasons, which was the best in the majors as far as percentage, now you're dropping down to 50%. And again, the Cincinnati Reds fans and Pittsburgh Pirates fans would be thrilled with that. But that's really not the point. That's beside the point, actually. The Cardinals, in his first 8 seasons under Mozeliak, they won 7 postseason rounds plus the 2012 wild card game. They won 7 rounds plus a wild card game in his first 8 seasons, but in the last 7, let's make it 8, but they have won 1 postseason triumph as far as winning a series. That was when they beat the Braves in 2019 in the first round. So 7 postseason series won, including the wild card game, or in addition to the wild card game in 2012. Since then, since the start of 2015 season, they've won just a single postseason round. So I know pennants 2 in Mo's first 6 seasons, no pennant in his last 10 seasons, which would include this one. World Series 1 in 2011, but if the 2023 Cardinals, as we know they will, fail to make the playoffs, it'll mark their 12th consecutive season without raising a World Series trophy. I mean, listen, I'm throwing numbers, but it's the only way I can explain this. I have to use numbers. That's why I have repeated some of these to just let you absorb all this. And here's one that bothers me, too. Mozeliak and DeWitt get credit for pulling off 2 heists, getting Goldschmidt from the Diamondbacks before 2019, Arenado from Colorado before 2021. Goldschmidt and Arenado have been teammates since the start of the 2021 season. Over that time, the Cardinals have the 10th best winning percentage. They've appeared in only 3 playoff games, and they're 0-3 in the postseason. Those guys weren't good in those 3 postseason games, by the way, but let's not miss the bigger picture. How can you get these 2 guys and only be 10th in regular season winning percentage? Now, again, I repeat, if you're the long-suffering fans of the Oakland A's or the long-suffering fans of even since the Royals had their heyday, back in 2014-15,
right?
You say, well, what's wrong being the 10th best team in the majors? Well, there's nothing wrong with it, except it's below their standards. Because when you are basically the second or third best team in baseball regular season winning percentage over a long, long period of time, and now you're 10th, since you got 2 future Baseball Hall of Famers, Goldie and Arenado. And the best you can do with them, giving you a head start on everything, and you didn't have to give up a damn thing really to get either one of them. I think you should be better than 10th in winning percentage, and I think you should be do more than make it to 3 postseason games.
100%.
Right?
Yes. I mean, gee.
So so on one hand, it's like, okay, hey, give credit to the bottom line. Look, these were gifts presented to them by the Arizona and Colorado. Okay, we know that. But they get credit for making the trades. But you make those trades and you don't take advantage of your thievery because you're too lazy and arrogant to actually put a pitching staff around them, right? A bullpen around them, and maybe some better position players around them. Now, that's not the case in terms of the position players this year. I know they've had some injuries, but the Cardinals' offense has been really, really good. It just has. That's a fact. I'm talking about their entire season, where they rank. 100% fact that this is a really good offense. It's not just me running my mouth, you know?
Oh, no. Somebody had it last night on running up their home runs, total home runs. Cardinals in the top 5. I don't remember what the exact number was. They're probably, but
they're third in the National League. They're seventh. They're tied. They're third in the National League in homers and home runs per game, and they're seventh. Might be tied for 6th, but they're 6th or 7th in the majors.
Yeah, so it's like, come on, that's enough to get you into the playoffs.
Yeah,
and the fact that they don't have the other stuff. The other thing, when you talk about Arenado and Goldie, I know this is a smaller stage, but I go back to the World Baseball Classic we just had. Those two guys were on Team USA batting the middle of the lineup.
Yeah.
It was just 1-2. I go, wait a minute, these guys are on the same baseball team in the regular season, and you can't find a way to win. It's pretty sad.
And it's really why, and I gave the stat the other day, the Cardinals between 2000 and 2015, through 2015, they were the number 2 team in Major League Baseball. It's a 21-season period, number 2 in ERA to the Dodgers, and it's pretty close. Mm-hmm. But since 2016, they're 15th in ERA. So how do you let that decline? Oof.
Yeah, that's where we talk about every night here.
So is he under pressure? Yeah, and I would argue outside of St. Louis, people don't really seem to understand. Well, why? What do you mean he's under pressure? Because they don't pay attention to the flow. They don't pay attention to the trend line. They don't pay attention to the fact that the arrow's been pointing down, 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 down. This doesn't mean they're a garbage team or they're going to be having losing records for the next 8 years. It doesn't mean that at all. But listen, the St. Louis Cardinals are not the Ottawa Senators. They're not the Washington Wizards, okay? They're not the Carolina Panthers, all right? They are held to a higher standard. That's the point. And when they are neglectful and they let these things slip the way they have, and it's been done over time, they could have put an end to this just by being more aggressive, but this thing just continues to slide and slide and slip and slide and slip. Yeah, I don't think that makes us a bunch of spoiled babies to point that out. Because you got one baseball franchise among the 30, one baseball franchise that outdraws St. Louis, and that's the Los Angeles Dodgers and their metropolitan area of about 17 million people, okay? So people say, well, you guys are babies. I know Joe Sheen feels that way. You guys are babies. No, actually, no. The babies support the Cardinals as well as that huge metro area in Southern California supports the Dodgers. And their TV ratings, local, are usually number 1 or 2. Maybe there was one time they were 3rd. No, the fan support is unshakable, unwavering, and deep and devoted, and it keeps the Cardinals, their finances, their revenues, keeps it in really terrific shape. So I don't think Cardinals fans take anything for granted. They're doing their share. They continue to do their share. Again, this is a high standards franchise. So I don't want to hear about other major league markets. Well, the Angels, look, they haven't won a postseason game since 2000. I don't care about the Angels. The Cardinals stand for something bigger and better.
Very much so.
And they've let the thing slide under Mo and DeWitt, really, after that 100-win season in 2015. And even then, they won one postseason game, the very first game in that division round series against the Cubs. Then they lost 3 in a row. Until the Cardinals actually make a move in their own, and they will be, the thing that interests me the most is like what we can learn from trades that are made and whether it applies to the Cardinals. And, for example, one obvious thing, because I was getting text messages from acquaintances, different people, including some politicians in Washington, wanted to know what I thought. Politicians from both sides of the aisle.
There you go.
See, they like me.
There you go.
Anyway,
you should run for office.
I'm a uniter. No, seriously, they were. Well, what do you think? What does this mean for the Cardinals? So, well, first of all, let's start with the basics. The fact that Giolito was moved, that's one good starter off the market. So that helps the Cardinals because they got two good starters, one really good starter to offer you. So this means, at least the way I see it, and I'm trying not to be like a homer, this means that Jordan Montgomery moves up. It means Flaherty moves up, not as much as Montgomery. So anytime a name pitcher and a good pitcher, because Giolito was having a good year this year, ERA under 4, he's good.
Yep.
So with him off the market, it makes the remaining starters, the good ones, it makes them, you would think, more valuable, even though it's the walk year thing. But the walk year thing also, I think what the White Sox were able to do in this trade, and I think it's really relevant to the Cardinals, what they were able to do in this trade, they showed you can get a really good return if you bundle. If you have all these walk year guys, if you try to offload them one by one, I don't know, you'll get some good stuff, but not maybe great stuff. But for a team that is desperate, as the Angels were, for a starting pitcher and a real live arm for the bullpen, even though they're walk-year players, when you can get two of those guys, you can fill two weaknesses. You're going to give up a lot more in return. So that's something. The Cardinals listen, and I'm sure they are thinking about it. I'm sure they have options to do this already. If the Cardinals bundle guys, and they have many different combinations they could bundle, just using the two-player method. You bundle Montgomery or Flaherty and Jordan Hicks. You bundle one of those starters and, say, Dylan Carlson. You bundle one of those starters and, say, Paul DeYoung. One of those starters with a team that might really fancy Tommy Edman, for example.
Right.
You bundle one of those guys with one of those starters with Tyler O'Neill, and maybe you give up a prospect of your own. You'll get a good return, even though you're trading a walk-year starting pitcher. Or what if Jordan Hicks is the headliner? You bundle Hicks as the headliner, provided he doesn't sign an extension with the Cardinals. But you bundle Hicks as the headliner for a team that really craves bullpen help, but also needs an outfielder, or they need something else, or maybe they need a shortstop. Hicks could be the headliner, and you combine him with some of the people I mentioned. Not a walk-year guy, but some of the other people you could add to the list. Or you could actually bundle a starting pitcher like Montgomery and Flaherty with Hicks, and I think you'd get a pretty good payoff. I asked Joe Sheehan, and I texted him because I wanted his opinion on this. I said, listen, did you like – I said, I like what the White Sox got, but I also value your opinion more than my own. And he said, oh, yeah, they did great. They really did great. And I said, all right, second part, help me, educate me. Does this change the market for the Cardinals? Does this mean that they'll get more for their own free agents to be? Mm-hmm. And he said, no, I don't. He says, because it's not linear. This type of thing's not going to all of a sudden reset the entire trade market about what the value is for walk-year pitchers. And then I said, it seems to me Mo could, do the same kind of thing the White Sox did. He could bundle two walk-year pitchers and maybe come away with a better return than if he tried to do it individually, So, and Joe agreed with that too. He said, I think the bundle's the way to go. So, anyway, those are my thoughts on that. It helps the Cardinals because it gets a good starting pitcher off the market, which means Jordan Montgomery moves up as on the desirability list. Jack Flaherty even moves up on the desirability list, and so. That in itself is good for the Cardinals, but the idea of they got the White Sox got two really good prospects in this trade. They did, but they also the Angels did that to get two pitchers that can help them.
Yeah.
So that makes it different. That's not a standalone trade. One guy goes and, you trade one guy and you get those two prospects and you're like, wow, they really cleaned. But no, I mean, the Artie Moreno and his general manager, and Artie Moreno is the general manager, they decided if we can get a starter and we can clean up our bullpen a little bit, it's worth giving up that catcher and that starting pitcher. The catcher, by the way, 20 years old, and he's good. He's got a lot of skills. But the Angels have a catcher that's rated above him.
Right.
And he was hurt this year. Nothing to do with his throwing arm, but he tore something in his non-throwing shoulder, and he hasn't really played much this year. But he's going to be fine because, again, it doesn't affect the way he's going to perform. So that's another reason why this was good for the Angels. Yeah, they gave up a really good catching prospect, but they have a better one ready to go.
That's
so
right on. And I think we had was it yesterday or the day before? We're talking about the Dodgers. Two of their best prospects are catchers.
Yeah.
Well, they already got Will Smith, so guess where they're going to be dealing from at some point, And you talked about bundling. I tell you, as you're going through that, what it reminds me of? It's what the Nationals did the last 2 years.
Yeah.
Remember, it was, Max Scherzer's going here, and then we found out, Trey Turner's in there. And then it was Soto's going here, and you went, and then you found out, Bell's in there.
And they got some real impact.
Yeah,
they did.
Makes a difference, so good call.
They got some real impact in that. They got Josiah Gray, who's a really good starting pitcher, in my opinion, one of the more overlooked starting pitchers, at least in the National League this year. And they got even more for that. I think they got their catcher in that deal, too, if I'm not mistaken. So we'll see what happens. I mean, the Walker thing is the sticking point that you just not sure whether they're going to get as much as people expect them to get or whatever. I still stick by that. But I think this can only be perceived as a positive twist in things. This Angels White Sox deal, by far the biggest deals of the trade, the swap meet timeline. There will be others. I don't really care about the Dodgers trading Noah Syndergaard to Cleveland for a shortstop that was blocking the path of somebody much better.
Right.
So I just don't care. That's just a garbage trade. The Dodgers do get better though if this kid Rosario or whatever his name is, if he can, is that his name?
Yeah.
If he can upgrade their defense, and maybe just going to L.A., maybe that lights a fire. So they did well, but yeah, I don't know. Then it makes me wonder. It's like, well, if you can get a guy who at least could be a starting major league player under contract, I got to double check that. And you give up the remains of Noah Syndergaard, right?
Yeah, that's where I was like, Cleveland. You could have done better than
you
that.
Pull Syndergaard out of the crypt.
Yes.
Put his grab his skeleton and ship it to Cleveland.
Yeah.
I mean, if you got a crate of Louisville Sluggers, that would have been a good trade. So I don't know how the Dodgers managed to talk people into these things. They must have the greatest negotiating team
they might.
History of mankind. Maybe they need to go to work for like the State Department, making deals on weapons limitations and all the trade agreements and all this other stuff. They're pretty damn good.
They do
pretty
a
damn
nice
good.
job.
The other trade today, and let me call something up here. I thought the Milwaukee Brewers. By the way, and I don't know why. See, I should never start talking about a trade without having the names in front of me, even though I wrote their names down. That reliever they got, I'm talking about the Angels, is Lopez. I was thinking of somebody else. I don't know why. So it's Lopez. But the bottom line, they got him. It's funny because they got Giolito, just a footnote on this, and then we'll get to the Milwaukee trade. Years ago, the Nationals made a terrible trade. And listen, I know the Nationals, went on to win the World Series. It was still a terrible trade where they gave up this exact pairing. Giolito, who was a starter prospect, but he was coming off an injury. He was a, first-round pick, highly acclaimed. They traded him, and they trade this reliever, Lopez, in the same deal to get 73-year-old Adam Eaton to play the corner outfield. And, Adam Eaton by that point was way past overcooked. He was done, way past done. So that was an incredibly stupid trade by the Nationals. And, they at least it didn't get in the way of them winning a World Series. I'll say that.
That's a good point. I had forgotten that move. That's a rough one. But when you win, a lot is forgotten.
Adam Eaton.
Right?
That guy's had a mystical hold on baseball people and a large segment of the baseball fandom population. I don't know whether because he's like smallish, he's always dirty.
That's it. He's always got a dirty uniform. That's probably
he runs into walls like he barks at the other team. He's chewing on the tarp. He's always putting on like, hey, I'm an undersized bulldog, tough guy, and people just used to fall in love with him.
Yes. He was rumored to come here a few different times.
Oh my goodness!
Go get Adam Eaton.
Oh, he was. He was on the secondary list of the all-time Cardinal fan obsession. Was Mark Burley, even to the point where after Burley said he was going to retire, it was still like I'd be listening to Cam Wax. Well, what are the chances? They signed. That's St. Charles, Burley. What's the chances? What's the chances, Tom Ackerman? And it's like, well, he's retired, And actually, he retired 2 years ago. Well, you think he'd come out of retirement? No, probably not. But anyway, who were some other Cardinal fan obsessions? Eaton was on that list, not as quite as high.
I don't know if it was necessarily fans, but I know Charlie Blackmon was supposed to be here a couple hundred times, right?
Oh, my goodness. Yeah. Yeah.
He's a great fit.
Blackmon had one season where he hit okay on the road, but his career, he is a Coors-made hitter if there ever was one,
Mm-hmm.
And people just didn't want to hear it, they wanted because he looked like a mountain man and all that.
Yes,
so that's why he was popular, the profile that fits the.
Carlos Gonzalez on the same outfield was supposed to be here a few times.
Well,
too.
they settled for Arenado. It's a shame they couldn't get Charlie Blackmon, but they settled for Arenado without giving anything up for him. So anyway, but I know that I am missing some of these obsessives because they were always fun. I always loved it. I thought it was hysterical. Just anyway. So the Brewers give up an 18-year-old international prospect who was highly regarded when everybody, was rating these international signings. I ain't going to talk about him because he's 18 years old, and we'll see. It's not like he's ready to go.
Right.
And they pick up Carlos Santana, who had signed about a $7 million one-year deal with the Pirates, and the Pirates did a good thing in flipping him because, again, the 18-year-old apparently is very talented. Whether that means he'll get to the major league playing field and stay there and play well, that's a few years away. But I thought this was a really, really, really good move by the Brewers. Now, if you look at Carlos Santana's stats, you say, well, look at his weighted runs created plus. He's about average. His slugging percentage is okay. It's .412. It's not great. He's hitting .235. So why is this guy such a good pickup for them? Well, first of all, the Brewers are in horrible shape at first base. That is one of the worst positions in the majors, first base for the Brewers in terms of offensive production. I mean, I'll look that up, but it's hideous how little their first baseman hit. And Rowdy Tellez's terrible slump all year. Now he's hurt. And if you look at Santana, first of all, he's a switch hitter, so that gives you some flexibility. But if you look where he has been, hold on a second, where he has been this year since the start of June, He's got a 470 slug, OPS near 8, and he's about 15% above the league average. So the point being that, his first couple months were ice cold, but he's gotten better and better and better. He's a winning player. He's got a great reputation within the game. He also, the switch hitter thing, I never just say, well, I just said it, but it's like I broke one of my rules. You never say, oh, well, he's a switch hitter. Well, as we've learned in St. Louis, does it really matter if the switch hitter cannot hit a certain, whether in the Cardinals case, right-handed pitching, Edman, Carlson, if they can't do a good, not even close to doing a good job against right-handed pitching, does it really matter if they're switch hitters? Now, with Carlos Santana, and I'll pull out the Bernie stat that I always have in my pocket, this year in Major League Baseball, 72% of the plate appearances have been taken against right-handed pitchers.
Okay.
Everybody worries about when that lefty throws. Well, you got to do that. It's like, calm down. Almost 3 out of every 4 pitchers 3 out of every 4 at-bats you take will be against a right-handed pitcher. Santana, since the beginning of June, and this is a guy they're plugging in at first base, and the Brewers face a lot of right-handed pitching. He's about 25% above the league average offensively against right-handed pitching. Since the beginning of June, Carlos Santana's slugging percentage against right-handed pitching is .513.
Oh.
This is a typical I'm not going to call it overlooked, but as more and more and more and more of these trades come in, people are going to forget about, or they won't give it much thought that the Brewers picked up Carlos Santana. It was, he's kind of old, isn't he? Well, his numbers for the year, the no context whatsoever. Mm-hmm. That's a hell of a pickup.
That is very nice. I didn't realize those numbers are that strong. That's great.
Yeah, and again, I think it's okay to parse him because apparently he does sort of have it like that in his career. He's kind of a hot weather hitter, and I know that's such a cliche, but that's kind of where he's been. So one other thing, and then I'll move on because I did want to close out this point. The Milwaukee Brewers this season, first base production, I'm almost there. Mm-hmm. I'm almost there. First base production, and that's why they got Santana to fill a huge goal. I mean, a hole, huge. They are down at the bottom of the major leagues. This is what their first basemen have done collectively this season as a group. Tell me what you think. .212 batting average. Mm-hmm. That's first base, supposed to be an offensive position.
It is.
.212 batting average, on-base percentage of .272. Both of these, average and on-base, are horrendous. Slugging percentage is .340, which is also horrendous from a spot where you need to have offense. And if you go by my fancy pants stat where 100 is average, the Brewers are 30th and last in the major leagues in terms of offensive production from their first base position, 36% below the league average.
Wow.
So they went from that to a guy against right-handed pitching, since the calendar flipped to June, puts him about 20. He's about 25% above average in terms of his first base offense. He can also DH if you need him to do that. So that's a good move by the Brewers, and that's why the Brewers are the Brewers, and that's why teams like the Cardinals, despite outspending the Brewers by quite a bit, really do. The Brewers make these kind of somewhat stealth moves all the time, and you're like, well, how the hell? What? Where's this guy? How did they do? How'd they pull that off? See, the Cardinals used to be that team. The Brewers are that team now in the division. Anyway,
it's a strong move. I didn't realize their production was bad.
It's horrible. It's horrible.
How can you be a first place team and put that production?
Run prevention.
Yeah, there you go. And pitching. That's what they got going for them.
Yeah, okay. And then you look at the Brewers, too. I'll tell you another one. Mm-hmm. Where are they? They're actually, they've done okay at third base. At second base this year, they're horrible. Again, collectively. at second base, they're 31% below average offensively. Right?
They thought Terang was going to be the kid that would take off, and he struggled. He went down. I think he's back, but he still isn't tearing it up. So.
And Willie Adames, who you and I both like him as a player and a competitor, he's had an off year. He's been banged up a little bit. And if you look at the Brewers' shortstop offense this year, 201 batting average, 664 OPS, and 21% below the league average. So they got a big problem offensively at first, at second, and at short. And they're good at catcher. I'm talking about offense, and they've put a makeshift thing together at third base. They're good, and now they have enough outfielders to go around where they'll be respectable. But hey, man, they pitch and they make it hard for you to score runs, and their manager very, very, very rarely screws up anything.
They have put a number on the Reds. They played them a lot lately, and the Reds have had trouble scoring runs on that team. To your point, with the run prevention. I mean, it's not just a smoke and mirrors. They're legit because we know the Reds can get on base and create problems, and they haven't been able to do it against them.
Brewers finished the season series. That's over already, which seems what a shame because they're the two teams, and the Cubs are on the outside. Don't know what they're going to do between now and Tuesday at 5:30, the trade deadline, whether the Cubs are going to add or subtract or try to live in both worlds. I have no idea. But it's a shame that the Brewers and the Reds won't go at it some more. But the Brewers won 10 out of 13 games from them this year.
It's crazy, isn't it?
And yet they're only, what are they? They're only like a game and a half ahead of the Reds?
It's close.
So that's really weird, isn't it?
It is.
But the Brewers have a lot of pitching coming back. Freddie Peralta's in his zone. He's gotten better and better and better. You know, they'll get Woodruff sometime next month. He'll be back. And, Colin Burns has been sick, as in good, lately. They got it going on a little bit.
I told you Peralta struck out like
13.
13 yesterday. So
Cardinals and Cubs tonight, it'll be the left-hander Justin Steele going for the Cubs. He's a really good pitcher, really, really good starting pitcher. 10-3, he's got a 2.95 ERA. He shut the Cardinals down at Wrigley last week. Miles Michaelis will be on the mound for the Cardinals, 6-5, 4.33. One of the most disappointing players on the team as far as lack of consistency and, signing a contract and then not really coming through so far. Cardinals lineup today. Keep in mind, left-handed pitcher on the mound. Brendan Donovan is the DH. Paul Goldschmidt at first. Nolan Arenado at third. Wilson Contreras is the catcher. Batting cleanup, Tyler O'Neill's in left field. Jordan Walker is in right field. Nolan Gorman is at second base, getting the start against the left-hander. Dylan Carlson is in center field against the left-hander, batting eighth. And then, of course, future National Baseball Hall of Fame inductee Taylor Motters at the starting shortstop. And people... a surprisingly large segment of the fandom, they whine and screech and mew and just make those awful sounds, cats make out in the alley, just things that make your skin crawl. When Paul DeYoung plays, hey, peoples, with Tommy Edman hurt, when Paul DeYoung is given a night off,
and he needs a night off.
You got Taylor Motter as the shortstop, okay? Or I'd rather have Motter. He got that hair. He looks a little bit like Toby Keith. I like him.
Oh.
I'm a bad person. That's basically the bottom line.